Now Hagar and Ishmael were sent away because Sarah did not want to share Abraham's inheritance, and the two boys could not get along. So after many years of waiting and struggle, Sarah and Abraham finally settled down to begin a family. Now all of this background is the story of the binding of Isaac, and it's all rich with orders and commands. Abraham does what God orders without question. Sarah follows her husband despite the improbabilities and her laughter. And even though they do in fact have a child that they so desire, it was not a pure and righteous path. Many people were indeed harmed in the making of this story. There are always many competing voices, voices that seek to make a claim to direct our lives, the influence of family and culture, the voices of those who have encouraged and discouraged us throughout our lives, our desire to be liked and wanted, to be seen and understood. There are voices of greed and power and vanity, as well as voices of love and empathy and hope. How do we clarify which one of these many voices is our own? How do we know when we can stand up in opposition to all conventional wisdom and follow our own inner voice? When Abraham is called by God, his response is an immediate, "Here I am." But he did not show up fully. He did not name any doubts to God. We do not see him talking this out with trusted friends, bouncing it off of his father, or even going off alone to pray and to consider before responding. God speaks, and Abraham sacrifices. The doubting was left to Sarah. She was somewhat the reasonable one. What we know of her was that she has obeyed her husband and that she laughed. And at this point in the story, she was rewarded greatly. The unlikely has in fact occurred. Sarah birthed a son at 90. Why not laugh and question and consider and ponder and pray? The only time that "because I said so" seems to work is when the other person, the person who utters those words, has power over the one who hears them. Abraham certainly had power over Sarah. The God of Genesis certainly asserts his power over the world. It seems to me "because I said so" and "because God said so" are very similar in nature. Both are a conversation ender. We are silenced. But what are we to take away from the story of Abraham? Or more importantly this morning, the life of Sarah. For Abraham and Sarah's story are woven very tightly together. His choices affect her life in ways that even he cannot possibly imagine. For Abraham's entire life, he has been doing what God has told him to do: abandon his homeland, lie, offer his wife to other men, and sacrifice whatever God tells him to sacrifice. And this God can be pretty specific. Abraham and Isaac saddled the donkey and took some men and set off to find a place that God told him he would see. Genesis chapter 22, verse 9 through 12 reads, "When they reached the place, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood. He bound his son Isaac, and he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, 'Abraham, Abraham.' Once again we hear Abraham respond, 'Here I am,' he replied. 'Do not lay a hand on the boy,' he said. 'Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son.'" Now God knows that Abraham feared God, not that he loved him. He feared God because Abraham blindly followed his command, because he said so. Abraham wanted something from God and would do anything to get it. Abraham was promised power and abundance. He was offered a special relationship with God. But what about the Canaanites and the Pharaoh and Hagar? This is a teaching story. So what are we supposed to take away? What about God's love for all people? And what about Sarah? While Abraham was gone, one midrash claims that Satan went to Sarah, appearing to her as a humble and meek old man. And Sarah thought that it was one of the men who had traveled with her husband and Isaac. No, it cannot be. Oh, my son. Oh, Isaac, that I had instead died instead of thee. I waited for you for so long to be born, and now you have been taken from me. But thou art just, God. Aren't thou just? Are not your works good and righteous? Am I supposed to rejoice at the death of my only son? This cannot be. Tell me, my servant, this cannot be. But he said so. That humble and meek man said, my child's death was commanded by God, and his life was taken at the hands of my husband. It cannot be. This God, my God, does not ask for child sacrifice. This God was supposed to change all that. He was the one. Isaac, where are you, Isaac? Have you seen my son? Have you seen my son? You have seen my son? Oh, wait, I've seen you before. Do I know you? What do you mean you spoke falsely? You said he was dead. You said so. I knew this could not be true. No just God would order a man to sacrifice his son. I just knew it. Oh, are you certain he's alive? I will die from relief, from joy, if you just would say that he's alive.